No one ever tells you who to be. That's the illusion. You are not ordered into an identity. You are surrounded by it, reinforced, reflected, repeated. And over time, what began as influence hardens into something that feels personal. This isn't a film about personality, or self expression, or finding yourself. It's about something quieter. It's about how identity is manufactured, maintained, and enforced, without anyone ever giving a command. Most people think identity lives inside them: preferences, beliefs, values. But identity doesn't form in isolation. It forms inside environments, inside systems that reward certain traits and quietly punish others. What you are encouraged to become is rarely stated directly. It's implied in what is praised, in what is promoted, in what is ignored. Over time, these signals accumulate, not as rules, but as gravity. And gravity doesn't feel like control. It feels like, this is just who I am. Control doesn't begin by shaping who you are. It begins by shaping what you do. Small behaviors, repeated actions, minor adjustments. At first, they feel external. A platform nudges behavior. A system rewards compliance. A structure incentivizes consistency. But repetition does something subtle. Behavior becomes habit. Habit becomes expectation. Expectation becomes identity. You don't just act a certain way. You begin to see yourself that way. And once behavior becomes self-concept, control no longer needs reinforcement. It has been internalized. Rules can be broken. Incentives can be resisted. Identity is harder, because identity doesn't feel imposed. It feels chosen. When someone challenges your behavior, you can reconsider. When someone challenges your identity, you defend. Not because you're threatened, but because it feels personal. This is why modern systems invest less in enforcement and more in identity alignment. If you control how someone defines themselves, you don't need to manage their actions. They'll manage them for you. Identity is not static. It is maintained through feedback, metrics, social signals, recognition, belonging. Every system that tracks performance also shapes identity. What is measured becomes meaningful. What is rewarded becomes desirable. What is visible becomes real. Over time, people adjust themselves to remain legible within the system. Not because they're forced, because invisibility feels like being erased, and identity fears being erased more than restriction. At a certain point, no external pressure is required. People begin to anticipate consequences before they occur. They self-edit, self-correct, self-restrain. Not because someone is watching, but because deviation creates discomfort. This is the efficiency of identity-based control. No guards, no threats, no punishment. Just alignment. Order sustains itself because disorder feels foreign. And resistance doesn't look rebellious, it looks confused. Identity begins as a framework, but frameworks can harden. What once provided clarity can become limitation. Growth requires contradiction. Exploration requires uncertainty. But identity demands consistency. Once a label is accepted, behavior is expected to match it. Deviation feels like betrayal to others, and eventually to yourself. So people stay within the boundaries of who they believe they are, not because they're incapable of change, but because change threatens coherence. A coherent identity is comfortable, predictable, stable, recognizable. But comfort has a cost. It narrows perception. It filters information. It rejects anything that disrupts the story. The more tightly identity is held, the harder it becomes to see beyond it. And systems understand this. A fixed identity is a controllable identity, because behavior no longer needs guidance. It follows automatically. Awareness introduces friction. Identity eliminates it. This is why awareness feels destabilizing. It loosens definitions. It creates distance between action and self. Awareness says, I am experiencing this behavior. Identity says, this is who I am. One creates space. The other collapses it. And systems prefer collapse. Most people don't feel controlled by identity. They feel validated by it. Seen, recognized, understood. Identity offers belonging in exchange for alignment. And for most people, that trade feels fair. Because the alternative, standing without a label, without reinforcement, without certainty, feels exposed. So the machine keeps running quietly. There is no dramatic escape from the identity machine. No rejection ritual. No purge. Awareness is not an exit. It's a margin. A small space between behavior and belief. A moment where you notice that identity is something you occupy, not something you are. This space is uncomfortable, but it's real. And within it, choice returns. Not infinite freedom, but precision. The most effective systems don't tell you what to think. They tell you who you are. And from there, everything else follows. Once you see this, identity doesn't disappear, but it loosens. It becomes a tool, not a cage. You stop asking, is this who I am? And start asking, is this necessary? Because the moment identity becomes flexible, control loses its deepest anchor. And what remains is not rebellion, it's clarity.